Have you ever seen a new console get revealed? Your eyes open with glee, wondering what the new and enhanced improvements will be for this new console generation. You're excited about the new UI, the new form factor of the console. You're excited about the specs and the leaks, and most importantly, the games. Then, when a console comes out and you see gameplay, you start to realize the game doesn't look that different compared to the Pro version of their previous console. Today, I'm going to talk about why games don't look that good at the console's launch. Now guys, before we get into this, hit that like button, subscribe, and comment if you have any questions or any input on the video, and let's get started. For example, I'm gonna say a game, one of my favorite games, The Last of Us. The Last of Us released for the PlayStation 3 in 2013 at 720p, being played at 30 frames per second. Obviously the game looks good on the PlayStation 3 Slim, but not as good on the PS3 2006 version. But again, they don't look that bad comparatively. Now we get to the PlayStation 4, and a year after the game has already been released, we get The Last of Us Remastered. Now looking at this game, we see it looks just like the PS3 version, but instead is being played natively at 1080p, 60 frames per second. Now the game looks super good, the shadows and all that stuff, new and expanded content, but when we really look at it, we see all the blockiness, we see like how Naughty Dog used to do with their game engine. It looks just like Uncharted 3. Of course, it's still at 1080p, but now looking at it, we see the shadows don't really hold up. We see the game doesn't look that good compared to the remake. But then we get to The Last of Us Part 2. A game made for the PlayStation 4 and a game made for the PS3, but the PS4 handles the game so good, it's almost like the PS3 version wasn't the real version. In fact, that the game was made for the PlayStation 4 all along. They just had a deadline and released the game on the PS3 because it runs so smooth, and yet it's held up as one of the best PS4 games ever. And just looking at Part 2, looking at how it's not blocky, the shadows don't look weird, the sharpness doesn't look off, and how it doesn't look like it's just pre-rendered cutscenes. Instead, it just looks so good. You wonder, how can both these games be for the same console within just a 7-year time span on the same console? They both look so different. Of course, Naughty Dog was using a different engine at this time, the same one they used for Uncharted 4. But again, you could argue that the game was made with the PS4 Pro in mind compared to the basic PS4. But if we take a look at Part 2, we do see that of course it was made with the PS4 Pro in mind, but looking at it on the original PS4, it still looks visually stunning. So why don't games look that good on console at its launch? Well, for starters, the game is not fully optimized, basically. When we look at a new game, and then we get a sequel a couple years later, and the sequel looks so much better, it's not really that optimized. You still get a lot of frame drops, the game engine they use is still blocky, and it wouldn't really make sense to switch game engines on the same console later down in its lifespan, and the game looks better, you know? It doesn't really make sense. And taking a look at Spider-Man PS4, game came out with the PS4 Pro in mind, right? But still on original PS4, it looks so very good and stunning. And just to think that the Amazing Spider-Man obviously being made, Amazing Spider-Man 2 obviously being made by different developers, the game still looks comic booky. It still looks just like, it was made using the same engine as The Last of Us Part 1, the remaster, right? Obviously different game engine, Unreal Engine and stuff like that. Naughty Dog has their own, but still it gives the same vibe and aesthetic. And just to think that with the help of Marvel and whatnot, that they have different looks and feels, in how the game looks. You have games like Red Dead Redemption 2 that looks stunning on the original Xbox and even more stunning on the Xbox One X. And just to think how on an old piece of hardware a game could look that good compared to if it came out on the original Xbox One instead of being made with the Xbox One X in mind, is because the games weren't optimized for the previous generation. The games obviously look so bad because it's made with the previous generation in mind. The games aren't really being made until like 5 years later with the newer hardware, so that it could be taken full advantage of. And I would say compare Spider-Man 1 to Spider-Man 2, but they both look the same, play the same. It's just added story. That game's not really that mind-blowing compared to the first one, guys. So if you guys agree with me, hit that like button, subscribe, and thank you all for watching.